You know what time it is. Preseason games are around the corner. Padded practices have arrived. The clips, the beat writer reports, all of it is hitting your inbox at the exact same time. So it's only right for Hayden and I to make a few, and I mean just a few, vital rankings changes in reaction to the news, depth charts, and injuries. And by a few, Hayden, I think I actually have like 22 items written down that have impacted our rankings this week. It's a big show. It's time to do it.
Yeah, everything's in big swings here. We're getting some preseason nuggets from reporters. We're getting players signed. I think every about Thursday, we'll have fresh rankings over on Yahoo. Yes. We'll do a version of this show. We have preseason games to react to. This is just, the first 10-ish days. There's a lot of nuggets. And I think some of it is like, I believe this nugget, and there's sometimes like that nugget came out and I actually disagree with it.
Totally. And I should mention Coach Speak is a part of this too, listening to press conferences. Yeah, if you want more of this, just know that every single Monday and Tuesday after preseason games, we will post 2 of these shows on rankings updates after watching literally every single preseason game. That's going to start on, I believe, Monday, August 17th. So hit subscribe now. I mean, to get them in your feed, it's totally free to all of you. And you all have helped us get to 175,000 subscribers here on this channel. That is nuts, but that just means 200,000 is up next. And yeah, Hayden said rankings updates. You've been asking for it. In the description down below, you can find our rankings over on Yahoo for both half and full PPR. Those are updated on the site every single Thursday, but again, we're updating them constantly on top of it. So check that out in the description. Okay, very newsy item to start with. Stefon Diggs is now a Washington Commander. There was buzz about this for a few days, then it happened. Diggs signs with the Commanders 1 year up to $12 million. Simple question, Hayden. Where do you rank him?
90th overall. He's my wide receiver 42. And then I looked and you have him exactly at 90th overall. So we're in lockstep here. Like you said, this one's been in the process for weeks. I think since that usually quote that we got from the GM, we kind of scratched off Brandon Ayuk, who I completely withdrew from my rankings pretty much. And then I think Diggs was the last remaining option for them. I'm treating this one as serious because Steph Diggs in a part-time role last year, kind of more of a slot underneath guy rather than the downfield threat that he was in his absolute prime, was still getting the job done. Obviously, he was playing with Drake May, but Jaden Daniels is a very effective quarterback. They don't have another wide receiver, too, that he's going to be competing with. So there's a chance his snaps goes up. I don't think he's going to be as effective on a per-route basis. That's fine. Jaden Daniels, there's upside here. It's just Terry McLaurin and Steph Diggs. I would not be surprised if he's a near full-time player in around the guys that I'm ranking him next to. I feel better about that offense or his path to playing time than some of the other guys.
So I have him as wide receiver 40, and that might be a little bit ahead of you. Is that too rich? We're talking about, for me, my rankings in that territory, Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison, Jordan Tyson, other wide receiver 2s on other teams, right before Chris Godwin, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed. That might seem crazy, where I think I had him previously when he hadn't signed with anyone in the 70s, but now that he has, we know the landing spot. I mean, this is the perfect place for a veteran to go to, right? It's a now more traditional, hopefully drop back offense with, David Blau that's going to get these guys in motion, use shifts, use play action with, the stale stuff that Cliff Kingsbury wasn't doing. And you have Terry, who, is going to be the primary pass catcher here. And I highly doubt we get up to 10 targets per game with Terry, but man, they were just craving and crying out for a second target. And when Stefon Diggs has been on the field the last couple of years, he has produced. I just hope somehow, some way, we get 17 games of Stefon Diggs this season.
Yeah, but I think in redraft, even if you can start him as your wide receiver 3, during the early parts of the bye weeks and stuff, I still think that there's some value here. I think that his floor is pretty solid aside from injuries. So I have him after Josh Downs, Worthy, Addison, Makai, Lemon. I just think that there's too much theoretical upside with those players, and those guys seem pretty good in terms of their playing time aside from Makai Lemon. We'll get on to that in a second here. But then he's in the conversation, Chris Godwin, Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman, Jalen Coker, those types. I just think that his pathway in that offense seems pretty secure to me. So I think this is going to be the range that he goes in. Right now on Yahoo, Steph Diggs is buried at 159. Not for long. He should be going around pick 100.
Yeah, ask if you can do your drafts now so you can get Stefon Diggs on your team before that X rank goes up much higher. Yeah, you can see on the screen right now the 8th round picks that we would be placing Stefon Diggs up against. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday on the show with Nate Tice. If you just look at where the Commanders are projected in points, they are right in the middle at 16th, right around the Philadelphia Eagles, Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And really, The only player that we were truly selecting high, other than Jaden Daniels, was Terry McLaurin. I mean, everyone was going super late. And so now we have someone that we can tag on to a Jaden Daniels stack if we want to.
I have Terry McLaurin after Jameson Williams and Christian Watson now, and I think I will flip both Rome Odunze and Luther Burden ahead of him. I do think this matters to him just a little bit. Terry McLaurin versus DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams. I think I'm going to rank McLaurin ahead of that group because I think he's just better on film than those guys and a little bit less injury concern. But I do think, Christian Watson and JMO, those guys are pretty damn electric right now.
Interesting. I'm standing firm on my highly ranked 20th overall wide receiver for Terry McLaurin at this point. We'll see if I move it.
What about Chig Okonkwo? I moved him down.
I was going to ask you this follow-up. That's my highest drafted player in Chig Okonkwo. We got reports this week from, I believe it was Jeremy Fowler, saying that Chig Okonkwo was, quote, the current de facto wide receiver 2. The dream is dead.
This one was kind of expected. I think that it's still a fine landing spot. The fact that Chig has been utilized as like the wide receiver 2 makes me feel like he will be third in targets. I think there's a lot of players that are going to be third, like him versus Juwan Johnson. Like, is there much of a difference between those two? So I think I have him ranked, I think just outside my top 150. He's my tight end 17 at 162. I feel really bad about tight end 16 to tight end 25 this year. I'm looking for sleepers. He's still probably the best one.
I agree.
I don't think that he's good enough to like actually be like a top 10 finisher though.
Yeah. I mean, he's going on Yahoo right after Jake Ferguson and Mark Andrews, who are locked into their positions. But then just before Oronde Gadsden, for example. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm taking Chig Okonkwo over Oronde Gadsden frequently.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have Gadsden in our show list, but he's running like behind like Njoku and Charlie Kohler right now in a very part-time role.
This may be for me, but we do have Bill Croskey-Merritt in our show notes, and we've talked about him quite a bit recently. But this comes from Ben Standig, who longtime coverer of the Washington Commanders. Quote, Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt isn't simply being handed running back 1 duties. However, last season's leading rusher is flashing enough as a pass catcher to position himself for the largest role in the backfield. Other observers have also talked up his passing skills. Hayden, I am well above market on Bill Croskey-Merritt. I have him running back 36 and actually 4-spot gap between he and Rachaad White, who I have ranked after. I know that I think you and Nate disagree with that take too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one I'm putting into the wait and see category. It's obviously promising that Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt, they're at least giving him the opportunity to do so. I still think it's, a pretty big leap of faith to think that he's actually going to steal the pass game work from Rachaad White, who's like routinely considered one of the best.
I don't think that's the case. It's more, as long as he's not a total liability in that area, that's all I want to happen.
Yeah, and most receptions happen on first and second down. That's one of these narratives where he's not playing third downs, he's not going to catch passes. That's not true. Like, look at Travis Etienne last year, for example. He still had enough.
I had this exact same note when we talk about Etienne a bit later on.
Perfect. Yeah, so with Ja'Cory going back to college, he caught 7 passes, and then his final year, it only like a game or 2, he didn't catch a pass. So like there's zero evidence that he can actually do this. So I think I'll put this in the experiment column. If I see it in the preseason, if this continues to go on, then I'll start treating this seriously. I have these guys still ranked fairly close together.
Yeah. The thing that sticks out in my head is Josh Connerly talking about outside and wide zone, and how they're going to lean into that, how the offensive line was fantastic at blocking that, one of the highest rates in the league in terms of per carry basis. And then Bill led the NFL last year in yards per carry on wide and outside zone. So he's going later than he did last year.
He is, and I do like that. This is the cheapest backfield. This and the Vikings, the 2 cheapest backfields in fantasy. I'm waiting for goal line carries. I think that one's still very up for debate because I think that Bill Croskey-Merritt's more explosive. That does not mean he's the more efficient success rate guy. Rachaad White's a pretty big back for like the receiving types. Like that's who I want. Who's going to get the goal line role? It's probably mixed.
Let's talk about the 49ers wide receivers because it's changing on a daily basis right now. We're going to talk Ricky Pearsall being out for the season with a PCL surgery now that he did not get surgery on previously. Since then, Deebo Samuel also signed for a 1-year deal. Since then, Mike Evans also suffered a quad strain and is now out of practice. And also 33rd overall pick, Deshaun Stribling has looked the part in training camp, but is also missing time right now. So how I'll lean and start this off with, Hayden, is with Ricky Pearsall out, where are you ranking Deshaun Stribling and Deebo Samuel, and which one is higher?
I have Stribling slightly ahead, but there's a big caveat here in that I think that Deebo Samuel is like more likely to finish like ahead of Stribling in like fantasy points, but not enough to like actually reach your starting lineup. I think that we need like some level of a ceiling that I don't think that Deebo necessarily has, where I do think that Stribling has just a better chance of having a ceiling. So they're both parked right outside my top 50 wide receivers. I think these are firmly dart throws. That said, if Mike Evans' quad issue is serious and he hasn't practiced the last couple of days, and we just never know about that, that type of injury, George Kittle setbacks, George Kittle just not looking the same, those are the type of ways where Stribling or Deebo Samuel can sneak into relevance here. So I think that both of them should absolutely be drafted in 10-team and 12-team leagues. These are firm bench stashes, wait and see. And then in week 1 rankings, I will have Deebo Samuel ahead.
So prior to all this, I had Ricky Pearsall as the wide receiver 35 and Deshaun Stribling as the wide receiver 60. So some people might say, then why not just have one of these wide receivers now as the wide receiver 35 if you just want to replace that? I just can't get there. I do have Stribling as the wide receiver 50. In recent Yahoo drafts, he's being selected as the wide receiver 49. And I do have Deebo as wide receiver 60. Now, I was in on Deebo last year to start the season, and actually he had some really nice games to open the 2025 season, but he just tailed off. It's a slow burn, let's say. I kind of think that might be the same exact thing. Now, Hayden, I can also get to a point, and hopefully Stribling like comes back soon and plays in some of these preseason games. He was ripped apart when we talk about NFL draft picks. We talked about it in our Dynasty rankings video after the draft, where he was going like at the 2.5 or the 207, which is nuts stuff. He might just come in and shock the world and fit in here as a power player with athleticism who is a bit of an older prospect. Like, I am open to moving well up from wide receiver 50, but that's just where I land on it at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get on the field first. So This is a very much wait and see. I could not move Stribling ahead of Casey Concepcion because of what I witnessed on their college tapes. That was my line here to start. I have Stribling by Rashid Shaheed, Romeo Dobbs, Wan'Dale Robinson, Khalil Shakir, those types. I think that he has some semblance of a ceiling that those guys just might not have in their offense. And then I am open to Deebo Samuel doing a Keenan Allen impression where like all of a sudden like week 1, 2, 3 comes around. We're like, oh my God, you have to play him early on. Then it kind of peters out. I would not be surprised if Deebo Samuel does that early on, which makes him, I think, a better redraft pick than in best ball.
Yeah, and Christian Kirk's missing practice. Jacob Cowing just left practice today too. It shows you how removed Brandon Ayuk is from this team too, that it's not even part of the conversation to bring Brandon Ayuk back. I do have one question. Are you moving Mike Evans at all in your rankings here?
I've been moving him down a little bit because he's just been banged up. I mean, look, it's soft tissue injuries year after year with Mike Evans. There's definitely a ceiling to chase here. But man, I like move like DJ Moore ahead of him, for example. I have Roma Dunze, Luther Burden, like these guys.
I swear to you, the audience, Hayden and I do not share notes prior to this. My one note is I have now moved DJ Moore ahead of Mike Evans. And Evans is now my wide receiver 27 in drafts. And, he's going earlier than that as wide receiver 26 on Yahoo at this point.
Final point on Mike Evans is we don't get any fantasy points on August 5th. So there's a lot of training camp injuries that are 1 week. We don't care about it. To me, it's just kind of like the drumbeat as we like, oh, it's been 2-3 weeks now. It's a rookie and the offenses doesn't even know how to use him yet. Where with Mike Evans, this is just a 1 week thing, I'm not that concerned about it. It's just, a little bit different when we're talking about his injury history and like something's already popped up this quick.
Yeah. And I know it's not a hamstring issue. It's a quad issue. But we also see Mike Evans miss 2 to 4 games on like a 4-year basis with hamstring issues. And, in a perfect world, it's cool to see a play caller like Kyle Shanahan link up with the Hall of Famer like Mike Evans, just as he did with Christian McCaffrey. But at that time, when he did it with Christian McCaffrey, he was like 26 years old and Mike Evans is 32 years old. So it's like a big difference. Like he can change this passing game. It's tough to trust him to play the entire season. Yeah. Final question. What does it say about the 49ers, though, if we're moving literally all of these names down the draft board?
I think that's a totally fair question, to the point that I've also moved Brock Purdy down my rankings a little bit. So someone like Jackson Dart, where maybe a month ago I've been like, yeah, right, I'm not going to do it. Now I think that's very up for grabs. Bo Nix has been finishing right next to Brock Purdy. he's healthy, and he added Jalen Waddle. Brock Purdy's losing guys left and right here. So I'm not taking it for granted that the 49ers are going to finish top 10 like they always do in scoring. Like, look at this team, man. The offensive line's not even good either. It's a very fragile offense. They're all very old, very slow. It would be like a feather in Shanahan's Hall of Fame cap if this team could finish top 5 in scoring this year, just looking at all the personnel that they have.
And the main reason, well, one of the reasons why we were drafting so many 49ers last year is because on paper, they had the easiest schedule. And so while everyone got hurt, they still were able to overcome it because of the easy schedule. It is not nearly as easy this season. Let's go to the top of the draft, because whenever there's Kid Walker III propaganda, we have to bring it up. Dan Graziano over at ESPN said, quote, "They signed Ken Walker for a reason, and they believe he gives Andy Reid something he hasn't had in a very long time. A running back that can do everything they need. They like him as a blocker, a pass catcher, as a between the tackles runner. They're running more under center plays with Mahomes, as they think that's the best way to maximize what Walker does best." So for all of us that drafted K9 last year and we're frustrated with him not getting all of the work, Hayden, this is music to our ears.
I'm moving up to 9th overall in half PPR. Nobody will be higher on him than I, and I love it. Look, man, I watched Rashid Rice run in a straight line. I'm a little bit nervous there. I know we're still ways away here. He's not going to run in a straight line that often. Just like watch him and be like, do we really feel good about that? Xavier Worthy leaves practice with a shoulder injury. How long could he stay healthy? We know what Travis Kelce is at this point. I'm watching Patrick Mahomes go under center in a lot of the training camp clips. That's really notable. It's something that Nate and I just talked about on his show when we were previewing the AFC West is Mahomes, if he's doing this with that big brace on early on, like getting under center where that's difficult to do, that's a sign that like the Chiefs really want to make that a priority. Like they're like, I don't care that your knee hurts. You're getting under center. The reason why you're doing that is because Kenneth Walker is the focal point of the offense. All the Kadarius Toney BS stuff that we would get by the goal line, the Travis Kelce stuff, Kenneth Walker right behind Creed Humphrey for 6 points. And I think he's going to catch passes. It's Amari DiMercado and like guys that we don't even like and day
Emmett
3 as the backups. Like, come on, the Super Bowl MVP.
Man, again, this is one of the cases where you love a player and then someone just loves him even more than you do.
Mogged.
Like, I have K9 as running back 7, 13th overall, which is way higher than any other platform is going to draft him. But here you are as overall 9th player. Like, I have to decide if I want CeeDee Lamb or K9, basically, and you're just taking Kid Walker III over him every single time.
Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb's interesting. Saquon Barkley and Kenneth Walker was the thing I was like focusing on before this show. It's not that big of a deal to me. There's some reports that Tank Bigsby like might take on a little bit bigger of like an early down role where maybe Saquon Barkley's not getting the 24th carry of the game. Maybe he's like more settles into the 17 to 20. It's these little nitpicks that we have to do. And it sounds crazy when you're sitting here and like, these are the smallest little differences. Try to rank the 1-2 turn, all these running backs there. I just feel good about, the Super Bowl MVP joining Andy Reid's history. And like, I can see a LaShawn McCoy type of season from Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, we deserve this after last year. We definitely deserve this. We'll talk about the wide receivers and the Chiefs a little bit later on in the rookie segment. Okay, let's talk Patriots backfield. Reportedly, according to the Athletics' Chad Graff, TreVeyon Henderson looks just like he did last year, and that means the same warts are in his game. Quote, "It's looked a bit like last season, big explosive plays, but just enough mistakes in pass protection that it feels like a risk to use him on third downs. If he can improve in that skill, though, look out." This is one of the players that he had glaring flaws in his game last year. Namely, to me, he was good in pass protection at Ohio State, and then was confused last year, and then just on contact lost a bit too often. So Hayden, despite all that, and despite Ramondre Stevenson basically outscoring him in games that they played together, he is still being selected in every single platform, well ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. That's running back 24 versus running back 30. Does that need to change?
I have it changed. I have them very close together. I'm going to let the rest of training camp speak to me on which one I would rather draft as we get closer to like peak redraft season. It's interesting that you had Chad Graff. I was listening to a different Patriots beat report. I forget which one it was, echoing the exact same thing, that they're just like not seeing it with TreVeyon. So like, I don't know if they're just watching practices and they're seeing the same thing, or if they're like listening and they're kind of hearing the same narratives. Maybe the coaching staff's like, hey, Ramondre is really good, TreVeyon's a work in progress, just to kind of like mitigate some of the talk that would be happening between that. Look, there's a huge gap that Ramondre has over TreVeyon in the playoffs. And on top of that, the goal line role. you're on the 1 yard line. You're going to give it to the guy that weighs like 235 pounds over that. So I think TreVeyon has to be exceptional in the pass game work in half PPR to overtake the goal line role that Ramondre Stevenson has. So I have them close together, both of them outside my top 25. And like, I think at this point I was there. Bashal Tootin, just like, I'd rather just take the chance on someone like that. Quinshon Judkins, I know is really good at football with no competition behind him. I know it's a way worse offense, but I'll just gobble up the touches because TreVeyon in the playoffs was like 5 expected points per game.
Yeah, your redraft ADPs out there are going to have a 6 running back gap between the two. I'm only at 2 spots between them. And that's namely because I have Ramondre Stevenson ranked higher than ADP at running back 27. You know what was interesting to me? And this might be, one study going against your eyes, even though I wasn't as down on Hendo as other people. But that same Sam Hoppins stat and study that we cited with Ash and Genty actually had TreVeyon Henderson as like the 3rd best runner when it came to yards before contact, which was kind of surprising to me.
It's one of those stats out there where a huge explosive, if you're not touched, like if you got to the perimeter, like that one play where it's like your expected yards before contact is like 40 yards downfield, that could like kind of skew things. So it's one of those where like you have to like put a cap to things. There's adjustments that you can be made. I just think that the reality is like, to me, it's the goal line role is what we're looking for in half PPR. I still feel good that's going to be Ramondre Stevenson. But at the same time, you can only get so high on Ramondre because he was clearly ahead of TreVeyon last year, and he was the RB21 when the Patriots made it to the Super Bowl. So there's a chance where both of these guys are mixing in, and like neither of them are like really moving the needle. They're both flex options for you. I think that's probably like the most likely scenario at this point.
To me, the biggest thing is their offensive line and how it was reorganized this year just needs to play better. Like in the first half of last season, they could not block from tight end to tight end. Yeah. And that's why when they finally leaned into the edge runs of TreVeyon Henderson, they finally got their best success. Now that changed as the season went along, but this of signing Elijah Vera-Tucker and moving their, rookie left guard last year now into center and drafting maybe their right tackle of the future in Caleb Lomu, maybe they get better blocking this year. So we'll see. Because that's more important than basically any individual skill set. It's just the yards that you give them. Okay, Let's talk Packers wide receivers. What we got in an interview this week from Jordan Love, as we've mentioned before, is that Matthew Golden, the second-year wide receiver, is going to play X, and Christian Watson is going to play Z. I love this as someone that ranks Christian Watson as wide receiver 24, which is a handful of spots above ADP. But at the same time, Hayden, I looked, and I'm above market on every single Packers wide receiver.
That's kind of a good spot to be in. I thought this wasn't that notable because I was expecting this. So to me, I was like, okay.
I think from a size standpoint, though, that this would surprise people in that Matthew Golden is not the biggest player, but his skill set, as we outlined in the second-year wide receiver show, kind of fits X in terms of, at the very least, and at his worst elements, he's going to be a really nice vertical role player, and hopefully he can build his game off of that. And that, then allows Christian Watson and Jayden Reed to do their best work in the other areas of the field too.
Yeah. To me, it's like Christian Watson was so good in this exact role. Why would you change it? Like, let's just hope that Matthew Golden could turn into Romeo Doubs plus and add a little bit more after the catch than Romeo was able to do. Work in progress. Reports for Golden, though, in general have been pretty optimistic. He's been like the MVP of some days at camp already. They're trying to get him more involved underneath, and that's something that LaFleur talked about, that there's more to his game, more toughness, more yards after catch opportunities in his profile. We didn't see that very often as a rookie. And I think the biggest note for me with Packers is just repeated use of, we got to get the plays out faster. We got to get to the line of scrimmage faster, more tempo. And if you look at the last 4 years, the Packers have been the slowest paced team in neutral situations, also been one of the most run heavy teams in neutral situations with Josh Jacobs. I'm not sure if the offensive line is as powerful as it was 3-4 years ago. I think that they're actually probably a bottom 5, bottom 10 offensive line at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, our best opportunity now is, so let's change some of the offense. Jordan Love's our main guy, and now we have 3 wide receivers that we feel good about with explosives. Let's stop being the slow-paced, balanced offense. Let's have a little bit more fun, and I think that's how you're ranking, where you have everybody ranked ahead of ADP. You take a couple swings on these guys and see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the implied team total just for the entire season. The Packers are projected for the 8th highest scoring offense. And then other than the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is the triplet and trio of wide receivers that we want to draft most often. And so, yeah, I kind of want all of them because in previous years, they've all been talented, but they've just been cycled and replaced, and we didn't know who was going to be in the field. You better hope we know who's going to be in the field in this stuff. Like, it's not going to be Savion Williams. It's not going to be Bo Melton, who's going in and out of playing corner and wide receiver. It has to be Christian Watson. It has to be Matthew Golden, who I have as wide receiver 44, despite him being drafted as wide receiver 51. And then I have Jaden Reed 3 spots above his ADP as well.
Yeah, I got Matthew Golden just ahead of Jaden Reed. We're about to have the Packers, what's called Family Night. And one of my favorite columns is Justice Mosqueda tracks every single snap, alignment, every little detail that you possibly would want. And that's their scrimmage that they actually treat seriously versus some of the preseason stuff. We're going to get that information very soon. And I cannot wait to see if that's Matthew Golden 2 wide receiver sets, as I expect, or if there's an upset here where Jaden Reed gets a little bit more involved, even though he's never done that throughout his 4 years with the Packers.
Love that. All right. Moving on. Let's talk more wide receivers and guys stepping up into roles. Josh Downs and the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, we're a fantasy football podcast, so we have to talk about Josh Downs. All reports that he's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets. Now, Hayden, that shouldn't be a surprise. Look at their 2 wide receivers. And in fact, no wide receivers other than Josh Downs right now out there because Alec Pierce isn't practicing at this moment. Solak wrote that Josh Downs has never had an average air yards per target above 8. The league average for receivers over the past 3 seasons is 10.7. That should go up. We just saw Stefon Diggs sign with the Commanders. And so, Hayden, I think that this is another prime opportunity for a veteran wide receiver to sign here. But let's say they don't. Where does Josh Downs rank for you?
I would say even if they do, if it's Keenan Allen, I think that's like a temporary like Band-Aid. And I do think that they should be spinning this thing forward towards Josh Downs. The math on how this thing works is the Colts averaged 8.2 routes in 12 personnel last year. If you kind of look at that on like what Josh Downs accumulates on a per route basis, that would be another 2 targets per game, about 15, 20 yards per game on top of that. That's like enough for him to be, I would say, a flex in full PPR, and then somebody that you can throw in as your wide receiver 3. So I've got him ranked as my wide receiver 38. I'm waiting for more news with Alec Pierce. He seems like 1 to 2 weeks away. I will say it's promising that Daniel Jones just like was out there in the first day of training camp, and like obviously it's a torn Achilles. I think it's his back push off Achilles on top of things, so that could make him less effective. But the fact that he's at least out there, I think, is promising. I think Downs and Alec Pierce and Tyler Warren are pretty nice picks because I think that one of them I think is going to really outproduce their ADPs, and that might just come down to which one's the healthiest.
Yeah, obviously with Josh Downs, he's a fan favorite out there, and he's being drafted as wide receiver 43. I have him just a little bit above that. The player other than Jonathan Taylor I'm really drafting is Tyler Warren, just because I think he is the best screen player. He is the best manufactured player. He's the one I can close my eyes and say, okay, on a split flow action or a boot or off play action, you just get him into the flats and let him rumble. I did want to bring up Daniel Jones, though. Solak, who was at camp, that's why we're citing this, and wrote it on ESPN, said, quote, I saw an unimpeded Daniel Jones. If you didn't tell me the quarterback was only 7.5 months removed from Achilles surgery, I wouldn't have known. Of course, I'm not a medical professional, and I'm watching him take 20-ish snaps during a 90-minute practice 1 week in the training camp. But Jones looks, if anything, just a little stiff and uncertain when he's moving. Maybe that's just my projection of his injury history, too. Suffice to say, he looks good. This is notable, Hayden, because the Colts were second in scoring last year when Daniel Jones was healthy, and now they're projected for the 17th most points. And as an individual, he's being drafted as quarterback 25.
Yeah, I think it matters the most for the other pass catchers because you remove Michael Pittman from the equation there. So, I feel good about it. I actually did move Jonathan Taylor. I think I flipped him with somebody in the first round, just seeing that Daniel Jones like looks to be on pace. And there was for years huge splits with Taylor with the starting quarterback versus the backup. And your note where he was averaging over 30 fantasy points per game with Daniel Jones through 10 weeks or whatever it was.
Crazy.
I will not forget that.
In wins. Yeah. When they won games, Jonathan Taylor averaged over 30 half PPR fantasy points.
I mean, you can get him like the 9th, 10th pick sometimes. That seems good.
I think that's league winner stuff.
Yeah,
when someone averages 30 fantasy points.
30.
One final question here, and maybe it's unanswerable, but we have seen when players miss the majority, if not all, of training camp, how much it impacts their regular season. How much longer does the Alec Pierce injury have to linger for him to, like, I know you have to rank him somewhat highly because that's what you do, but like just to say, hey, I'm probably not going to be able to draft him ever.
Well, I actually am ahead of market on Alec Pierce because it sounds like he's going to be back in the next 2-ish weeks, and he had like 2 weeks to kind of ramp up. And he's being drafted so much further down than where he finished last year. You lose Michael Pittman. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to have the same yards per target that he had the previous season, but there was speculation, and I believe it, that they do think that he can run more in-breaking routes and have higher targets this year.
That's why they would pay him that much.
Exactly. And that's why they got rid of Pittman to pay him all that money. I do believe there's a chance that even coming off the injury, that he does have a lot more targets this year than he had last year. So obviously you moved him down because he'd opted to have the surgery, but I don't want to like double, triple count that if he's all of a sudden, we're going to look at our rankings like, oh, he's practicing on August 19th. They're not playing for another, almost full month here. And I'm ranking him after guys that have never come close to what Alec Pierce did last year.
Yeah, maybe we can use the dreaded phrase baked in to his ADP. He finished last season as wide receiver 18 in points per game. And, he's going as wide receiver 32 right now.
Yeah, I'm ahead.
Yeah. I mean, like behind Marvin Harrison Jr. And, Marv hasn't scored as high as Alec Pierce.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, let's talk backfield splits. Travis Etienne versus Alvin Kamara. Again, this is one of those interesting conversations that when the Saints spent so much money on Etienne and we get through the draft and we're like, oh, he's just going to be the bell cow, and expecting Alvin Kamara to either go to Cancun or, do something else, when in fact he restructures his deal and he's back. Here's a quote from, I believe, a beat writer that Etienne's been working on the early downs with Alvin Kamara getting the first call on third downs in passing situations. So a lot of fantasy drafters would read that quote and be like, dang, that's scary. But I don't think you and I are as scared as other people reading that.
No, first of all, not surprised. Alvin Kamara cannot play early downs. It's just like, he's just not good enough to do that. If he's going to be on the team as the wide receiver or as the running back too, what would you do? You would throw him the ball a couple times. I also say this, Kamara's pass protection was a total disaster last year on top of things. So, and not that Travis Etienne's like so good at that, but we both are going to bring up the same note.
Yep.
Most running backs catch their passes in fantasy on first and second down. The third down role is to pass protect and not let your quarterback get lit up. In a perfect world, you do the CMC thing where you never come off the field. You catch passes on every single down. There's like 2 or 3 of those every season. And then most of the time, the entire like back end of RB1s, your Josh Jacob tier, and then your upside RB2s, they're in this role where you get all of the touches in the first and second down. You're going to get the goal line role. You catch some passes on first and second down, and then somebody else mixes in. That's what happened last year with Travis Etienne when he finishes the RB11 on RB14 usage, did not play any pass down work because they had LeQuint Allen, still caught plenty of his enough passes to pay off this ADP. So yes, you're not going to have CMC. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, if I was to ask you, the audience, how many of Travis Etienne's 36 receptions came on third down last year, I guarantee you all of you would get it incorrect. He had 1 third down reception last year on third or fourth down. He had 35 of them were on first and second down.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be competent enough to catch the occasional screen, the occasional check down. He's good enough at doing that. That gets you 30, 40 receptions in a season. Not to mention, this is the fastest paced offense in the NFL. Alvin Kamara can go straight to wasteland. There's nobody really behind him. So like, there's still that opportunity. And the offensive line, I think, is just way better than he's ever dealt with. So I'm still breaking ties in favor of him. I understand why narratively his ADP is going to drop. I think him versus Scadaboo is like an actually interesting conversation. But in terms of like projected half PPR points, even with all those wide receivers that we like, who's more likely to score more fantasy points this year? It is still those 2 guys.
Offensive line was the point I was going to bring up. I mean, you have Kelvin Banks, you have Eric McCoy, and you have Fuanga. Nice core. And then you brought in David Edwards from the Buffalo Bills at left guard.
Yep.
And then hopefully you can just like figure out the right guard spot between Cesar Ruiz and Jeremiah Wright, who was a 4th round pick this year, and just fill that spot in. He is going in an interesting area, though, as you said, with the running backs, because I think all of us are going to rank Breece Hall higher than Travis Etienne, but at least on Yahoo, Cam Scadaboo is going 1 spot earlier. And there's a big gap between that Swift, Bucky, Quinshon, Dave Montgomery territory.
I still like that tier of running backs. And, it's like the dead zone.
And I love this tier of wide receivers is my issue. That's my big thing is I can't get over this tier of wide receivers. They just catch my eye more than Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
I got to be honest.
Yeah. I get it. I'm still interested here. I think just let the board fall to you.
Should we talk some rookies?
Please.
Okay. Jeremiyah Love. We'll start there since he was the 3rd overall pick in this past draft. Through 8 days of camp, so this was a few days ago, according to Josh Weinfuss of ESPN, Tyler Algier was, quote, getting the majority of the carries with the first team. Now, this is certainly one organization that you can get a heck of a lot of coach speak from, whether that be Mike LaFleur or OC Nathaniel Hackett. Both those men love to talk, and they love to use phrases and coach speak and all that stuff. Just overall, where are you at right now with Jeremiyah Love, all things considered, team point totals, glut of running backs, and him going as the 26th overall player right now?
Little nervous, but not going to double, triple count all of this stuff. There has been a history of backs that we absolutely love not paying off ADPs at this cost as rookies because other players get in the way. And still, I'm not going to completely bury him. I have him 30th overall. I think that in the back half of the round 3, that is an extremely enticing pick to make. I feel better about the Malik Neighbors type of players ahead of Jeremiyah Love. Pick your favorite wide receiver. I think Breece Hall I would rather have than Jeremiyah Love at this point, but it's close. I am taking them serious that they do like Tyler Algier, and I think that one of the scarier parts of the situation is, aside from the offensive line, aside from their dead last in projected points, they do keep naming James Conner. Like, this can't be
Tyler
the third.
Algier. It's not just James Conner.
Yeah, but I was expecting this just to be Algier and Jeremiyah, and then thanks for the memories, James Conner. It's like, oh, James going to have a role. He's been a very strong player for us. Maybe he gets involved in the goal line. I think that's the one thing is Jeremiyah is not much bigger than Algier and James Conner. In fact, he's smaller. So we need the goal line touches to make up for this. So there's a chance where he is the RB12 in the back half of the year, and he was the RB20 in the first part of the year. And I think that's an interesting profile, but it's definitely a tier down from the round 2 running backs.
Hopefully I can frame this in the right way, but let me ask you this question, okay? If we just talked about Jeremiyah Love, who granted is a heck of an individual talent, one that we compare the running style to Reggie Bush, just electric, but he's in a multi-person backfield on the lowest projected offense in the NFL at 18.4 points. Why are we taking him ahead of Kyren Williams, who is also in a split backfield, but one that is projected to score the most points in the NFL, who was 5th in the league in carries inside of the 10 last year? If we're getting split backfields between the two, wouldn't the tiebreaker somewhat be who and which team is going to score more touchdowns and more points? And isn't that just so obviously the Rams over the Cardinals?
I think that this is the difference between median outcomes and then versus the high end outcomes, where there's some high end outcome where Jeremiyah Love is so unbelievable in ways that Kyren Williams could never even dream of being, that just makes up for it. And at the same time, I do think that your median baseline case is very much up for debate. The Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs. If Josh Jacobs doesn't get suspended, Javonte Williams doesn't have to have the third down role necessarily. Those offenses are going to score double the amount of points as the dang Cardinals here. And we know they're going to be at the goal line, where Jeremiyah Love, I think, is not going to get all of the goal line opportunities in that offense. So
right.
I think that you can say blindly, Jeremiyah Love, this is the next Jahmyr Gibbs, let's party. He's the next Bijan Robinson. Then if you go look at their rookie seasons, it was probably not at the same degree as the 26th overall pick. So I'm getting a little bit spooked. And then if you allow me to take him at 34th overall, I'll be very excited.
Yeah. The high end outcome is this, and it's when Mike LaFleur had Breece Hall during his rookie season, when he was running back 7 in points per game. And that was even with a slow start of getting 12, 8, and 14 touches until he became the hot hand and carried the backfield from there. Now, that was, with Michael Carter sharing the work versus Tyler Algier and James Conner. But Breece Hall was electric that year, and they did a bunch of pony personnel stuff too, if you remember.
Yeah. Yep.
That would be the high end outcome, that Jeremiyah Love just proves it, and it might not be until week 4, but once he does, then he's getting 18 touches and is off the races in a lot of situations too.
I see your ranking. Are you scared to compete? Are you going to say it out loud what you have Jeremiyah Love right now?
Let me find where I have Jeremiyah Love right now. Yeah, I have him as running back 16 at this moment.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher, but we're both below market. That's fine.
Yeah, like I have Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, and Kyron Williams ahead of him right now. But you give me one sensational run the preseason, and I'm all the way back in. I am easy to please. That's for sure. Hey, I just got to be honest, man. I am kind of terrified taking 4 Arizona Cardinals in the top 95 overall picks on the lowest projected offense in the NFL. That is not a crazy statement to make.
I pretty much draft none of them, I feel good about it.
Then there we are.
I feel good about it.
Okay, let's talk Makai Lemon, but almost via Dontayvion Wicks, okay? Because the Eagles wide receiver 2 at this point has been, and kind of their wide receiver 1 because everyone else is injured, has been Dontayvion Wicks. This is from Jimmy Kempski, who has long time covered the Eagles. Through 5 practices, Wicks pretty clearly looks like the second best receiver in camp. Now, Makai Lemon currently dealing with the hamstring issue, as is Devontae Smith. But I was hoping Makai Lemon, because he has the skills to do it, would hit the ground running. If he's not out there kind of proving it and solidifying his status, then that leaves me some uncertainty of how much volume is the second wide receiver going to get with the Eagles. So my Makai Lemon ranking heading into the season right now is like very much in flux.
This is where price tags matter. On Yahoo, he's the 100th overall player. I would draft him there. And at the same time, this is where you get a little bit nerve-wracking in that Makai Lemon is mostly a slot player. That's how he was at USC. I think he'd be a slot plus, absolutely. But this Eagles offense will use multiple tight ends a lot, and they might even do some multiple running back stuff on occasion as well, and there's not enough pass volume in general because of the Jalen Hurts stuff and what they do at the goal line. They're not throwing the ball inside the red area. So you have to be in 2 wide receiver sets. If you are not in 2 wide receiver sets, you should not be on a fantasy team on this Eagles team. And that's where the Makai Lemon stuff, where it's not just this hamstring injury, it's like the same hamstring injury that he's had throughout the offseason where they've kind of been easing him in. And Dontayvion Wicks is like one of these players where like you don't trust him, but he flashes enough and he is big.
The highs are high.
Early in the season, I think my baseline case is that like Dontayvion's actually going to be out there in 2 wide receiver sets. It does not mean I'm taking Dontayvion Wicks in most redraft leagues. He's absolutely clickable in best ball, and I'm starting to do that plenty. And I think that Makai Lemon's going to have to earn this, and he might be like a back half of the year player. Not writing him off. I think still a fun bench stash. But he is being priced like around wide receiver 36 in the best ball streets and stuff. I think that the baseline case is pretty nerve-wracking at that price tag. Yahoo, it's much cheaper.
I think I had Makai Lemon as wide receiver 39-ish, and now I've moved him closer to wide receiver 48. Maybe that's a bit of an overreaction, but it's just all these other names that are popping and playing right now, where it's, both Packers wide receivers and Reed and Golden or Casey Concepcion. And we talk about Jacoby Myers. And look, if we get Makai Lemon back in practice in a week, then I'm going to move that up. But just how it is right now, it's a bit rich at this moment. So I'm kind of wondering, though, at the same time, we know how long these seasons are. And could Makai Lemon have like a Luther Burden-esque rookie season where, he barely plays for 5 weeks and then flashes real moments, and as the season goes along, makes some real poppy plays despite not being, an 80% snap player. And I think that's definitely in the range of outcomes. I love Makai Lemon as a prospect. I would love him even more if he was practicing.
Playing, and then it's just like one of these offenses where the floor, you have to get on the field at the right exact times, because inside the 10-yard line, they just never pass the ball. So you have to be out there getting peppered with targets and be really efficient on them to overcome the lack of touchdowns that you're going to get aside from the long bombs that we got with A.J. Brown and Smitty. So it just, there's definitely an upside case here, but you start to get a little bit nervous about like what the baseline is.
Okay, let's talk Browns wide receivers, because they took 2 in the top 40 overall picks. According to Zach Jackson, who covers the team, is at practice every day. Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston are already miles, galaxies better than any of the other wide receivers. Shout out Ian Hartitz and his Jerry Jeudy backs. Look, Casey's going wide receiver 52. I have him as wide receiver 45, and actually have Denzel Boston as a top 60 wide receiver at this moment. We know the quarterback situation is disastrous, but Hayden, we really liked both of these wide receiver prospects.
Yeah, I had both of them as round one guys. I had Casey Concepcion as like a top 15 overall prospect. I think that Concepcion's more fantasy friendly and that he's going to get some manufactured touches and could score 40-yard touchdowns because he's so dang explosive. Denzel Boston is one of these guys where he's your X receiver. He's your red zone back shoulder guy where he could kind of steal some touchdowns away from Jerry Jeudy and Casey Concepcion. At the same time, they're not going to score many of them. So I moved Denzel Boston up. I moved Jerry Jeudy down because there was that one point where you're like, these are still rookies, and Jerry Jeudy has been a 1,000-yard receiver and stuff. The fact that both of these rookies are flashing, I do think makes the Jerry Jeudy stuff impossible. I think the only one that you should draft in redraft leagues is Casey Concepcion, and then I would have the other two as like waiver wire. Keep watching these guys who's standing out. And there's a chance that Denzel Boston does play more snaps than Casey Concepcion because he's like the X receiver of the team.
Tough needle to thread, though, when your quarterbacks are Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders.
And it's been bad.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel apparently is performing the best of the group, but, practice should be the time where Dylan Gabriel looks the best, and that's his time to shine. So, yeah, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself of loving the individual talents, and I need to factor in the quarterback situation that they're in with it, too, for sure.
Yes, we do.
Let's talk Chris Brazzell. He's out for the season, tore his LCL. This mainly impacts Tetairoa McMillan for me, though, in that the Panthers went into this offseason, and one of the reasons why they drafted Chris Brazzell was for him to line up in isolated looks and have Tetairoa McMillan almost double his slot snaps this season. He was down at 15% last year. Their goal was to get him up to 30%. Out of the slot last season, he had 18 catches on 26 targets for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. 14 of those 18 catches went for first downs, 12.2 yards per reception. And then he just had 5 touchdowns on 59 wide receptions last year and a much, much worse catch rate. So I don't want to overcompensate here, but hey, we always ask, hey, what can second-year players, what can they unlock in their second season? I think that this was the plan for T-Mac, and it's going to be dialed down to maybe what it was last year versus expanding it more.
This is one where I think I disagree because I think that Brazzell and Xavier Legette are, to me, you throw them at X, they're not going to earn any targets, make them run fast in a straight line down the field. And I don't think that we should have expected Chris Brazzell to be way better than Xavier Legette. I think that to me is just like a toss-up. And to me, I would just be like, guess what? Now Xavier Legette, you run straight down the sideline and never draw a target, and we still use Tetairoa McMillan in a very special way, like the Drake London way, which was very helpful for the offense. I remember going back and watching them for one of our previous videos. There were so many 3rd and 4th down situations that they got explosives where the only player that they were throwing the ball to was Tetairoa. And on those plays, he would be in the slot. They would sometimes motion him, but even sometimes just like a pick play, big slot fade, a big out route. And he was awesome on those. I think that there's just no way you can go into the season without saying the condensed field stuff with Tetairoa McMillan, whether it's a slot or just the formation that you're using. It was way too effective. So I think that Chris Brazzell, Xavier Legette, it's a wash to me. I'm still in.
Interesting. XL at X has been a nightmare, a disaster. Yeah. And his best work has kind of been at Z. And I think that they know that too. And for Brazzell, they did kind of just want him to line up and clear out and get downfield. So to me, there is a difference in their minds between the two.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I would just be like, Xavier Legette, you have been sacrificed. You are the X receiver. I don't care that you never draw a target. Who cares?
Let's quickly talk about Jonathon Brooks, because we've said this quote before from Cameron Wolf, that quote, if Jonathon Brooks is healthy, they have expectations of him potentially being the lead back over Chuba Hubbard in this offense. That quote was prior to training camp. And what we've seen from Jonathon Brooks is that he's practicing in 11 on 11. He's been taking kick returns. He's not going to take kick returns in the NFL in games. But it just shows you how much participation he's been having. So, Hayden, I know I have closed the gap significantly between Chuba Hubbard and Jonathon Brooks and almost have them like back-to-back in rankings now.
Yeah, I have them very close in rankings. I think you will have to take Jonathon Brooks ahead of Chuba Hubbard within the next week or so. That's in all formats. This is one where I would love to see him. It's great that he's healthy. I believe. I
don't know if you will in preseason. I don't know if you will.
That's the hard part. It's like, okay, now you get into week 1 and then you're watching the first game. You're like, amazing, there he is. Or you can be like, that's Javonte Williams coming back from injury, the first year, the Broncos version, and it never materializes. And then there's just been so many injuries for Carolina that you just like start to worry. Like you just look at the starting lineups on both sides of the ball and you just get a little bit worried that there's just not going to be enough fantasy points from the running back positions if it's a close to an even split, which I think is my baseline assumption, where Brooks has more receptions, Chuba has more carries, unless one's way better than the other. And I think that just comes down to not Chuba. I know what Chuba is. It's just, is Jonathon Brooks that guy, or is he a different version of himself coming off injuries?
Yeah, I have Brooks as running back 31 and he's running back 36 on Yahoo. So I think there's some value there on Yahoo right now. Let's talk Cyrus Allen and the Kansas City Chiefs, because Cyrus Allen to open camp was ripping it up. And then he got carted off with a shin injury, which seemed to be the best possible outcome for him. And he should return this week. Our buddy, Sam Sherman, posted one of the great tweets of training camp so far that said, in July, Chiefs Day 3 rookie is making plays in camp. In August, Chiefs Day 3 rookie is getting snaps with the first team. And then September 10th, NFL season starts. Chiefs Day 3 rookie has been reassigned to the Omsk Oblast Penal Colony in Southwest Siberia. And I just, off the top of my head, thought about some Chiefs that made noise during training camp. And if you have any of these other names, let me know. Carson Steele, Justin Ross, Jalen Royals, Brashard Smith, Deneric Prince. So hopefully Cyrus Allen does not add to that list.
I would say the big difference, though, Cyrus Allen, if he can beat man coverage like Matt Harmon says he can, like I would be open to that, just the desperation. I was listening to the Chiefs coverage, and it was my guy Schwartz and the ESPN reporter who's been there for a very, very long time. And they were just going through Chiefs training camp, and they were just laughing at how injured they are and like how like it's just not looking good. Aside from Mahomes like seems like to be on pace, but Xavier Worthy, he can't survive contact. He has the same shoulder injury. The Rashid Rice stuff, obviously, we watched what that was. He's got some time to scale up, and it still makes me nervous that, maybe his rehab in jail wasn't as clean as
he's
it
kind of
needed to be.
rehabbing on the fly in training camp practices versus, everyone else probably would have reported early. And he was in jail at that time.
Yeah. And I think just watching Rashid Rice, he has to be a demon after the catch underneath, because that's like what he's good at. The rest of the game is like not good for Rashid Rice. So if he's not good at that explosive part, then it's like, what exactly do you do here? So I'm struggling with these Chiefs. It's even on the other side of the ball, Mansour Delane's in a non-contact uniform, and they said that that's going to be the case for weeks. Like all of a sudden, just like this, I feel a little bit nervous about the Chiefs. Maybe they're more of a 500 team this year, where I just like, it's going to be Kenneth Walker. And then I think all these guys, it's like, I'm not sure how much I want to draft any of them. I've been doing Xavier Worthy the highest just because I'm nervous about the Rashid Rice stuff.
Yeah, Rashid finally returned to 11 on 11 today. So maybe they are ramping him up. I'm still well ahead of market on him, but there's time for me to change that. Let's put it that way.
He's one of our biggest disagreements. You have him as 22nd. I have him 44th. Well, I'm not saying if I'm right or you're right. I think it's very like, it should be, one of us should be high on him and one of us should be way, way down on him.
Yeah. My thing is, when he has played on the field, he has finished much higher than 44. So unless his knee is completely shot, which it really might be, then I'm leaning more towards what he has shown us previously, especially with, all the questions among all the other pass catchers at this point. Caleb Douglas and the Miami Dolphins. Yes. Chris Bell got a bunch of love. Whoever else you want to bring up among wide receivers are also on the roster, but apparently Caleb Douglas looks the best among all Dolphins wide receivers at this point. Quote, there's a healthy buzz around Caleb Douglas. He should be a factor on slant routes and plays over the middle. Chris Bell has first round talent. The Dolphins can't wait to get him on the field, but they don't want to rush his recovery from a December ACL tear. He is getting closer though. So Hayden, at any point this season, is Caleb Douglas going to be relevant to us?
In the sicko leagues, he should be on people's radar. I have him draftable in best ball. The other Chris Bell nugget is he's a ways away, and you can tell that he's running with a little bit of a gait kind of wonkiness. It just doesn't look right. He's still so explosive and stuff. You're like, wow, even in a straight line, while he's got that little giddy up to him, it's like, I just think that it's just going to take a while. Caleb Douglas was drafted ahead. We've seen round 3 wide receivers just like get on the field and like, oh, there's a fine enough player, better than I thought he was going to be. And there's no competition here. So I think waiver wire material. I can't wait to see him in the preseason.
Jacoby Lane was the first wide receiver selected by the Baltimore Ravens, other than Elijah Surratt. You really can't get more opposite of these two players, I think, in some ways. But But Jacoby Lane, your guy from USC, has, quote, become the star of Ravens training camp and is the early favorite for the number 3 job behind Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. So first, Hayden, how excited should we get about the third wide receiver on this team? And second, does this also surprise you or shock you? Because, Jacoby Lane's best 10 catches might have been the best 10 catches of any wide receiver prospect in this class.
He dunked on everybody in college. And as a reminder, he was actually consensus ranked ahead of Makai Lemon before the last season. Jacoby Lane is an interesting guy. He's not very fast. He runs really slow. And I never understood if he's doing that purposefully and he's like trying to like finesse guys or if he just like has no juice. We'll see about that. Not too surprising. In redraft, the Ravens wide receiver 3 means 0. In best ball, there's a chance you can kind of tick him on the back of your lineups. Rashad Bateman, I think, is definitely the clear favorite to number 2 stuff, but there's a chance that Lane or Surratt could flip him. I thought Jacoby Lane was better than people thought.
Lamar hasn't really had that type of a player. This downfield sideline ball winner. So maybe that's an area that they can stress a bit more often in like 2nd and 12, 3rd and 9, everyone's covered. Let's throw it up to Jacoby Lane. But
I like that.
Yeah, I would love to see him in preseason action. That's for sure. Who we won't be seeing is Kenyon Sadiq. Suffered a setback after hernia surgery in May. The Jets' first round tight end pick. Their head coach said, quote, very confident he will be back by week 1. But Hayden, this is not the type of player that you want missing the vast majority of his rookie training camp.
I don't like weapon tight ends. I thought that he needs some development. I didn't think that he was like his route running. I thought was pretty weak for how explosive he was. And if he's not going to be a super athlete coming off this injury, that has me a little bit nervous. And I think more important to that is, you have to get integrated into the offense. If he hasn't been out there for a long time. So, and then his competition is a second rounder who can kind of do a little bit of everything. So he's undraftable. I hope that he's a waiver wire target the second half of the season, makes some explosives. He does seem like the type of player where it's going to be impossible to know when he rips off his 35-yard reception. But I'm just not sure if there's a pathway to playing time.
Yeah, I have some concern that Frank Reich's going to be able to build his offense around a first-year tight end and incorporate him when he can't even incorporate him in practice.
Yeah,
I don't know if Frank Reich has that ability at this time. All right, let's get back to veterans. We already talked about Daniel Jones. So next on my list is Mike McDonald talking about our guy, Rashid Shaheed. Quote, again, a challenge of this camp is how far can we take it? How far can we take that relationship between Rashid Shaheed and Sam Darnold? How far can we take his route tree? How great of timing can we create with those two? You and I have spoken at length that after the trade, he just really wasn't incorporated into the offense in terms of consistency, but they gave him a nice deal that was basically the same contract that K9 got with the Kansas City Chiefs. And what's standing in his way in 2 wide receiver sets is Cooper Kupp. Like, we could look back on this draft season and say to ourselves that Rashid Shaheed was one of the best value picks on the board.
I like when I'm looking at my sleepers list and it's like a clear number 2 wide receiver on a team and just something has to break his way for him to get more involved in the offense, whether the defense is worse, the passing game is better than we thought, the number 1 wide receiver goes down. I think he's going to finish second in targets on this team. He's going to be in the Ricky Pearsall role, just looking at the Shanahan tree. That's the offense that they're going to be running. The new OC comes literally from the 49ers from last year. And I think that Pearsall, his best stuff was like these big out routes, big crossing routes, like way down the field. And that's what Rashid Shaheed's so good. I think that Shaheed's far shiftier than Ricky Pearsall underneath. So there's a chance that they get that more involved, but going to be difficult to predict the involvement on a week by week basis. I like him in best ball. And if something does happen to JSN, I think that Shaheed's good enough on tape to be an every week wide receiver in starting lineup. So I do think that he's very draftable in all formats.
He's in this interesting area. Like, I have him ahead of Xavier Worthy at this point. I feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
But it's wide receiver 2s and 3s out there. And Jacoby Myers, Michael Wilson, Makai Lemon, Deshaun Stripling, Jalen Coker, Jaden Higgins, Wandale, and Rashid Shaheed. And I'm not exactly sure how to stack that group right now.
Yeah, I like Coker and Higgins, maybe like volume ability more, and Pittman's volume ability more. Same thing with Cortland Sutton. And then it gets down to, Do I need to see Jacoby Myers more targets to him versus I think the Rashid Shaheed's a lot more fun. So that's kind of where like the line I'm drawing. Same thing with like Khalil Shakir. Like I would rather just have more fun with Rashid Shaheed.
We love Nick Underhill. He does a fantastic job covering the New Orleans Saints. He actually responded to your ADP board on Yahoo with one simple statement that Juwan Johnson is criminally low.
Ooh.
Your read on that situation is what?
Just listen to him. There's nothing. It's the best thing. I wish we had 32 Underhills.
Yes.
I have him one spot ahead of Chig. I have him ahead of Hunter Henry, AJ Barner, Brenton Strange, Hawkinson, Dulcich, Dalton Schultz, Gadsden, all those guys. He's not going to win you your league. He was the tight end? I think it was tight end 15 on tight end 13 usage last season. Tight end 8 in targets. Obviously, you add Jordan Tyson to this. You're going to take some of that away from Juwan Johnson. I think he's like the most likely to finish as a fantasy tight end too this year. Of all that mix, like I can see downside cases on all these guys. I think that Juwan Johnson's a good enough player and a good enough fast-paced offense where I think that he can be a top 20 fantasy tight end.
And it's not just Underhill saying it, it's other reporters as well that he's been the standout of camp with the other new pieces kind of being integrated into this offense. You can see on the Yahoo board right now, I would simply take Juwan Johnson over Kenyon Sadiq and David Njoku pretty
easily. All
right, rapid fire to close this out, Hayden. You brought up some backups that might have some news, or it's just that in their field is news. And MarShawn Lloyd tops that list.
MarShawn Lloyd's healthy. He's been balling. And you never know with the Josh Jacobs stuff that's still under investigation. MarShawn Lloyd, I think, has a lot of promise as a player. And I do think that he has bell cow ability if something ever happens to Josh Jacobs. If you're listing backups, who's most likely to get some starts this year, he would be high up on my list because Josh Jacobs has a chance to be suspended this year. That'd be like about 6-ish games typically. And then you just have Josh Jacobs gets the ball 20 times per game and runs really hard and's older and had some injuries previous to this year where I think even if he's not suspended, there's some injury risk with Josh Jacobs. So I feel confident MarShawn Lloyd is firmly the RB2. And I think he's actually a pretty good RB2 to the point where I think in 12-team leagues, he should absolutely be drafted. I think I only have Tank Bigsby as like for sure much better than MarShawn Lloyd as like pure handcuffs. But yeah, I think
he's your second ranked handcuff across the league, a guy that has 6 carries in his NFL career entering his 3rd season.
Like him versus Pacheco. I'm not sure if Pacheco's actually, I know Pacheco's not very good. I think there's a chance MarShawn Lloyd could actually be good. And the guy that's in front of him might get suspended. Like even if it's just a 25% chance that Jacobs misses time this year, I think that's a much higher odds than like just blindly taking a running back without suspension risk.
Yeah, just for you people who don't know who MarShawn Lloyd is, he was a 3rd-round pick by the Packers, had 6 carries during his rookie season, and has been injured ever since. Behind Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson is gone. He's on the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe he can somehow find himself back on the Packers based on if you read the Seahawks reports right now. That seems like somewhat of a possibility. And if that's the case, then I think we might adjust the MarShawn Lloyd takes just a little bit. Okay. How about the Cowboys backups? Because do they have one? Jaydon Blue versus Malik Davis versus Phil Mafah. What's the latest news?
Jaydon's apparently just like showing up and, is not wearing crazy ass cleats. And seems to be earning the trust of the coaches a little bit more. He makes the most sense purely as a Javonte Williams sidekick. I think that's kind of as far as I'll go with him. But I think he's draftable in full PPR, really deep leagues. Just keeping my eye out on him because I do think if he didn't have the knucklehead concerns, I do think he would have probably been drafted higher in the pros and he would have got on the field more as a rookie. These guys, we're talking about pure dart throws at this point, but I do find him interesting. Him versus Tyjae Spears and stuff. He's like, at some point, I would rather just have the guy in the Cowboys.
I also think preseason actual games tells us so much about who the handcuff is for these running backs that a lot of my mindset might change with number of these running back 2s over the next 3 weeks.
Yep, totally agree. Can't wait for those games, man.
Did I miss anything? Did we cover it all?
We probably missed something, but that was enough, I would say.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if we forgot something. But guess what? We're going to have rankings updates and multiple of them starting August 17th when these preseason games roll around because Hayden and I are going to watch every single one and relay everything that we saw. It's truly one of our favorite times of the year. So lock in, subscribe, join us here on the channel. Shout out to Mojo and Weaves behind the scenes and you for watching. We'll talk to you in the next video. See ya.